Now, on the heels of the worst downturn in the recent history in the year 2020, owing to the pandemic and oil price shock, Nigerian economy is seen emerging back to growth in 2021 as demand at home and abroad recovers. However, the outlook remains fragile, clouded by uncertainty regarding the oil price trajectory, rising inflation, elevated unemployment, security challenges, and social tensions. There are projections that GDP will see a growth of 1.9% in 2020, which was down 0.2 percentage points from last month's estimate, before picking up to 2.9% in 2020. According to the reports amid an improved outlook for oil prices, Nigeria will continue to grapple with the aftershocks of the coronavirus recession as external and fiscal imbalances propagate negative shocks across the exchange rate and inflation channel. The resulting macroeconomic turmoil will require a return to credible policy settings, implying that more than ever before, the direction of policy responses by the government will be crucial to returning the economy on the path of growth. Well, I have joining me now live via Skype from London to assess Nigeria's growth projections and macroeconomic issues in 2021. He is a partner and chief economist at PricewaterhouseCoopers Nigeria, PwC, Mr. Andrew Nevin. Thank you very much, Mr. Andrew Nevin, and Happy New Year to you.
Toto, Happy New Year. Very happy to be with you today.
Yes, I'm going to start with the lockdown in the UK. How is it like? We still have Brexit on one side and now a full lockdown because of the coronavirus infection. Can we just start on that note? How is it playing out?
Well, it's not easy here. I mean, I had spent the first part of the pandemic in Canada and then had come here to the UK to then have come back to Nigeria. And everywhere I seem to be seems to be in great difficulties. The last few months have been hard. We had a lockdown, a little bit came off. Now we have a full lockdown again. And it wears on you. And of course, I get to work from home, so I'm privileged in that way. But it's not an easy situation. And then with Brexit on top of it, we're not sure how that's going to end up playing out in the ports or inflation or complexity of that. So the UK is facing its own challenges today as well as Nigeria.
Truly, as well as Nigeria. Now, issues that shape 2020 for us in this part of the world. Some say poor economic management, raging global pandemic, and unsteady oil prices, and of course, the lockdowns. How did you see all of this playing out in 2020 and the effects on the figures that we're seeing at the moment?
Well, I think that it's easy to be critical of what's happened in Nigeria, but I think that's unfair. I mean, I think that what everyone around the world has faced, including Nigeria, was a kind of unprecedented level of health and economic shock. And of course, in the headline numbers, 2020 is going to be proved to be very difficult, perhaps -4%, -5% GDP growth. You just came out with the growth in 2021. The headline number projected about 1.9%. That's similar to what the CBN says. I think that in a sense it's almost baked in at this stage, because one of the things that's happened is because of the pandemic, people haven't been able to solidify their investment plans. So the only thing that's going to get us growing economically in GDP terms is people investing in Nigeria, Nigerians investing, and outsiders investing, but the diaspora investing. But it's very hard to do those plans when you're not there able to physically advance them. So I think for 2021, we're going to be in another situation where about 2% GDP growth. I think the issue now is, are we going to set up the policies to make sure that in 2022 we start to get fast growth? Because we all know that we need growth at 6 to 8%. I think the CBN governor even yesterday came out again and said he's aiming for double-digit growth, not in 2021, but as we get to 2022 and 2023. So this is a year to make sure some of the decisions and policies are taken so we can get faster growth. Because just, I think we all realize that the population growth is about 3%. So even when we grow at 2%, the country is still getting poorer and poorer per capita. So we've had that happen since 2015, so many years. It needs to get turned around as soon as possible. And the earliest we could probably have headline growth faster than population growth is 2022, but more likely 2023. But whatever it is, it has to be as soon as possible.
Andrew, I was also looking at this issue concerning our population growth and our GDP growth. Now, there is a projection that our population could reach 263 million in 2030. Meanwhile, GDP is growing very slow, at an average of about 1.4%, if that's what we're looking at, if not even lower at the moment. Now, some are saying countries like Nigeria would experience incremental decline to income per capita over the next few years. I don't know how that comes to you.
Well, we've had it, as I said, in declining income per capita since 2015. I mean, it's just urgent that we get that turned around. I can't imagine. We've gone through 7 years of it, 8 years this year, 9 years perhaps in 2023. It has to get turned around. I can't imagine going out to 2030 continuing to have declining income per capita. We all understand, the issues that raises, the social stability, the youth unemployment, the levels of absolute poverty, and it's just absolutely imperative that we reach what the CBN governor says, which is double-digit growth. So we can't have it continue this way.
The CBN governor, Minister of Finance, the last I heard of them, they are so optimistic and believe that we would exceed recession in the first quarter. I don't know how. I don't know if you also agree to that. And what can we really do to achieve that? Some are saying, no, not visible, second quarter, third quarter, more visible, but they're still saying no. One way or the other, we could get out of this. To me, it looks like a tall order.
Well, I think there's a little bit of exactly what is a recession. I mean, we had such a sharp contraction in the third quarter over the third quarter that in a sense the next quarters are going to be better relatively because it's such a low base. So I'm not concerned in the technical terms whether people are in a recession, out of recession. We just need to start growing in a headline sense. And we put forward a few things about this that are critical. I mean, we really do think the starting point, and more people recognize it, is unlocking all the dead assets in Nigeria. Some of these dead assets are the state-owned assets. I mean, the obvious ones like Agio-Kuta Steel and the refineries. You also have things like the National Theater, the National Stadium. These are all assets that are very valuable but are not producing a return for Nigerians. But we also have the whole real estate market, which is not functioning. And we've said for a number of years that unless real estate functions, residential housing, building of houses, we're not going to come out of recession and grow people's incomes. So that's kind of the number one strategy for us to come out of this. I think the second point is, if you go back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, we exported from Nigeria 60 billion naira worth of agricultural products in the third quarter. Well, 60 billion naira is not a very large number. And one of the reasons we're exporting so little, of course, is because we really have these infrastructure problems and particularly bottlenecks at the ports. I mean, people are all aware of what's happening at PAPA. So that's why we've been saying at PwC, we really need to focus on exporting services, on exporting things that don't require physical movement. And more people are saying this. Nigerian Export Promotional Council is starting to say this. I mean, the reality is, as we've said before, the biggest earner for Nigeria is already the diaspora. So it's Nigerian brains, delivering services abroad and sending back money. In a post-COVID world, there's a real opportunity for Nigerian brains to deliver services around the world without leaving Nigeria. So I always cite the example of Outsource Global, the incredible company started by Amal Hassan from Kano. Her company is based in Kaduna and Abuja. I think they're setting up an office in Maiduguri. They have 1,000 young, educated Nigerians delivering services to companies abroad, multinational global companies. And those people earn foreign exchange for Nigeria, and there's no physical movement through the ports. And just given our short-term needs, given the fact that COVID means more people can work from different locations, and given how many educated Nigerians we have, we think the best strategy in the short term to diversify is actually to diversify into services and to have more companies like have Amal Hassan's company grow, but also have more companies like that. And of course, some of the global companies are starting to put more of their development centers here. I'll cite Google as an example. Tech Experts is set up in Lagos as well with a large number of seats. And that in the short term is going to be, I think, more efficient to be able to generate FX and diversify than trying to go through the kind of creaky port structure. Because really, if we're honest with ourselves, to really fix the physical port infrastructure, the physical road infrastructure to bring things to the port, that's going to take, even if Nigeria does the best job, 3, 5, 7 years. But we really need growth now. So we would like to see a focus on services and on exporting Nigerian brains without people necessarily leaving Nigeria.
Andrew, when we talk about unemployment and underemployment, it becomes very worrisome to me because there are a lot of issues surrounding low level of industrialization, slow pace of growth, low employability and quality of labor, and also slow implementation of some labor policies. Now, many say a lot of things need to be done for us to really, you touched on Ajao Kuta earlier when you were talking, all of this by government is also for them to create more jobs. But how well do you see all of this bridging this gap? Because this issue around job remains very important for us to develop.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that can be done about the past, right? But I think our position has been that that all levels of government, particularly the federal government, should focus the scarce resources that we have at the moment on the development of human capital. And so particularly, obviously, healthcare, education for Nigerians' youth. And this is education at all levels. So I was talking about the housing industry. There really needs to be a focus on vocational skills. We need electricians. We need plumbers to make this work. We need carpenters, which are all highly skilled occupations. I think sometimes in Nigeria there's a tendency to be so focused on the university system on that. But we need, people that can do things physically with their hands as well. So the scarce resources that the country has should be focused on developing the human capital of Nigeria on that. In terms of what I was talking about before, exporting services, obviously there's customer relation services for call centers. There's things around programming, companies like Andela that have done that. And that's where the focus should go. So, I mean, I think part of the problem that we've highlighted is the strategy has been to, I don't necessarily want to say waste, but to focus resources on physical infrastructure, where actually the human infrastructure is what really needs the attention right now, and particularly because the government doesn't have enough money. So we would like to see the government focus its resources on the human infrastructure, and then the private sector will be the ones that come up with the capital for the airports, for the roads, for the inland ports, for the seaports, and other elements that we need. But the government capital can't go to that. Government capital should be going to invest in Nigerians' youth.
Andrew, let's talk about this very beautiful document, our budget of economic recovery and resilience, about 13.6 trillion naira, just signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari. I am worried about deficit and debt servicing issues.
Right, that's a good question. First, let's take the positives out of this. I mean, for a couple of years now, the budget cycle is now stuck to the scheduled budget cycle. I think that His Excellency the President and the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning have done a great job of doing that. And then, of course, we've had a number of acts like the CAMA Act that you said. So there have been real reforms and a real effort to make this work. Of course, the headline number, I think, is about a 5 trillion Naira deficit that's reported. And, we'll say what we've said for a number of years is that deficit is not an issue if the economy starts to grow. I mean, it's still a very small part of an economy that's about 170 trillion, 160, 170 trillion Naira at the moment on that. Our problem is not the deficit, 5 trillion, 3 trillion, 2 trillion. Our problem is the growth. If we had 6 or 8 or 10% growth even, no one would remember about the deficit at all. The only reason it's an issue is we haven't grown the size of the overall size of the official GDP number on that. And to put this maybe another way, there's no way, I mean, if we don't grow, yes, this deficit and the level of deficit spending and the amount of resources going to interest payments, the amount going to recurrent expenditure, that is going to become a bigger and bigger issue very quickly unless we grow. So the long and the short of it is there's no prosperous path forward for Nigeria without headline economic growth in GDP. And that headline economic growth, the minimum level that we've said for a number of years is 6%. But what the CBN governor said is exactly true. There is no reason, given the incredible opportunities in the economy, and the incredible resilience and entrepreneurial spirit of Nigerians, there's absolutely no reason this economy can't grow at 10% for, certainly the next decade. And that's where we absolutely need to get to alleviate the poverty, to reduce the unemployment, and to make people's lives better.
All right. Another very important one is the AfCFTA. We've talked about trading within the African continent, expanding this market, and taking advantage of the population. How well positioned do you see Nigeria? Because that's been the argument. How competitive is our manufacturing sector? This market has a potential indeed, but are you sure we are going to get what we really want from this market with the way the country is structured at the moment?
Well, I mean, I think we all understand some of the limitations. Are we prepared in the manufacturing sector? The short answer is no. But I mean, we want a manufacturing sector that's 15, 20, 25 times bigger over the next decade. So it's not so much the manufacturing sector that we have, it's the one that we want. But I would say that, people need to remember that the AFCFTA is part of the African Union's 2063 program. So let me repeat that, 2063. So this is 50 years from 2013 to 2063. It's not a short-term thing. I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on what Nigeria should be doing in the next 1 or 2 years. I mean, obviously we're part of it. I mean, we should be exporting services as well within Africa, and of course we should be. Lagos and Nigeria should certainly be a center for financial services. And actually, some of the banks are doing extremely well outside of Nigeria at the moment. So it shows Nigerian companies can be competitive. But I don't want AFCFTA to become a distraction at the moment. I think what Nigeria needs to do is just focus on the fundamentals that we all understand. So ease of doing business, power reform, land use act reform, coming through on the PIB bill, for example. If we focus on those fundamental things that are already in flight, and get those right and get investment levels up, both from Nigerians and others, we'll do fine from AFCFTA. And over a period of, I think, 5 to 20 years, AFCFTA will really benefit Africa. But for us at the moment, if we focus on our fundamentals, we'll be in a position to be big beneficiaries of AFCFTA. But don't expect massive change in the African or Nigerian economy just because of AFCFTA in the short term. I mean, if we look at the European Union, I mean, this started with 6 countries back in the 50s. It was 1992 when they had kind of what we might call a full integration. The euro only came a decade later. I mean, these are long-term projects that have long-term benefits.
Andrew Nevin, I'm going to give you just 1 minute. What's your advice to businesses at this time? I know that's a big one. Despite the fact that everything looks bleak, there's a second wave everywhere. What would you advise if you were to give any advice at this time?
Well, I think businesses and the groups, government, but also non-government actors in Nigeria have done a very good job through COVID with palliatives and helping the less fortunate at the bottom of the pyramid. And I think they'll continue to do that. My advice for the organized private sector is work together to affect the reforms that are needed for Nigeria. I think if the organized private sector with a singular voice can interact with government at both the state and the federal level, they're going to make an enormous difference on the trajectory of Nigeria. So please, everyone and all my friends in the organized private sector, financial, manufacturing, power, agriculture, let's get together and give a blueprint for Nigeria that's workable and solves the problems we all want to solve: youth unemployment and poverty in the country. And it's not that difficult. Many countries in the world have lifted tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Nigeria can, I don't want to say easily, but Nigeria certainly is capable of doing the same thing.
All right, Andrew Nevin, thank you very much. Hope to see you in Nigeria very soon.
I am desperate to get back. I just, hopefully I won't bring more trouble with me as I seem to everywhere. So.
No, not at all. Thank you so much, Partner Chief Economist, PricewaterhouseCoopers, there, Andrew Nevin. He joined us live from London.